Overnight, the United States rescued an American airman missing inside Iran since Friday. President Trump announced the news on social media. He wrote that the aviator is injured, but, quote, will be just fine. A second crew member had been rescued earlier. Meanwhile, the president also continued to ramp up his apocalyptic rhetoric toward Iran. He posted on Truth Social this morning, on Easter morning, quote, Tuesday will be power plant day and bridge day, all wrapped in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the, quote, fucking straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Joining us is MS Now senior national security reporter David Rohde. David, we've had you on all morning, and we are bringing you back because we have to get you to react to what the president said. What's your reaction?
I'm just very concerned. Look, and I can't say enough about the amazing members of our armed forces. In a way, I want the president to succeed. That helps the country. This tweet, to me, shows us just a very deep lack of understanding of Islam and of the region. And I really talk about this. I spent 7 months in captivity living with Taliban jihadists who had kidnapped me. The way to counter these extremists is to actually empower and back moderate Muslims. The vast majority of Muslims are moderates. By posting this, it's not going to intimidate the Iranians. Telling them they're going to go to hell won't work. They want to die as martyrs. They're extremists. Some of the people I met in Taliban captivity were planning to become suicide bombers. So it's really just disturbing that the president sent this out. It's the remark, praise be to Allah. If a Muslim leader, tweeted something and said, praise Jesus in a seemingly sarcastic way, that, might obviously offend many Christians. So it's just this seems to be a belief in the administration that by threatening and bullying and by simply using air power, as we talked about before, you can get a government to capitulate. And I don't see that happening here. And so it just really concerned me that this kind of rhetoric was used. And again, the mass majority of Muslims, an Afghan helped me escape from captivity. So did a Pakistani. They were moderates. And so they're out there. They're in Iran. They protested in Iran. So this kind of approach of just threatening to bomb bridges and power plants, which if it's done in a widespread way is a war crime, it's just, I think this sets back the efforts to win this war and weaken this regime.
MS Now's David Rohde, thank you so much for your coverage this morning. Good luck. President Trump's exceptionally hostile message to Iran today follows a similar threat on Saturday, as he warned Iran must reopen the Strait of Hormuz or agree to a deal, or else all hell will rain down on them. Rain spelled R-E-I-G-N. And it's just the latest in a week of provocative threats toward Iran. He said this in his speech to the nation.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
Just this week, Trump celebrated this strike on a bridge near Tehran on Thursday, which killed 8 people and injured nearly 100. And posted on his Truth Social after that, our military hasn't even started destroying what's left in Iran. Bridges next, then electric power plants. In an open letter this week, more than 100 international law experts warned that U.S. strikes on Iran violate the UN Charter and may be war crimes. Joining us now, retired Lieutenant Colonel Dan Maurer is among those who signed that open letter. He is a former JAG officer and current associate professor of law at Ohio Northern University. Also with us, retired 4-star general and MS Now military analyst Barry McCaffrey. Okay. Daniel, thank you very much thank you both. But Daniel, I am so excited you're here because we have been talking all week in the lead up to this about basically what constitutes a war crime and whether the president of the United States, whether the administration, whether our government is threatening war crimes, has done them. I think it's a moment that it has such gravity, but also lots of confusion because it's not as clear cut, right? We have them blowing up this bridge. The United States government says that is a bridge that was used by the military. The president is calling it power plant day and bridge day. If it's a power plant or a bridge that is for civilian infrastructure, that's one thing. If it's used by the military, it's another. Is the President of the United States committing, or at the very least, threatening to commit war crimes?
Possibly.
Yeah.
So this area of law is both old, goes back to the Geneva Conventions, if not earlier, and well understood by the military. The fact is, bombing a power plant or bombing a bridge is not necessarily a war crime. In and of itself, it's not a war crime. Generally speaking, civilian infrastructure like bridges, roads, tunnels, power plants, etc., are protected. They're not supposed to be attacked unless they are a legitimate military objective, in which case it has to meet two factors. The first factor is it contributes to the enemy's military advantage. The second factor is by destroying it, by attacking it, we get a military advantage. So it may be the case that a civilian power plant is also providing electricity power to the Iranian military in a consistent way, and by destroying it, we knock out a considerable amount of military hardware that provides us an advantage tactically. So that's not necessarily a war crime. However, even if you attack civilian infrastructure because it's, quote, dual use, military and civilian use, attacking it still must be proportional. You can't cause disproportionate collateral harm. That means the anticipated civilian damage, property and people, can't be excessive in relation to the concrete military advantage that you expect to be gaining. And that's entirely in the calculation of the commander that's directing and ordering the strike. Now, for something as complicated and as high risk and high visibility as a power plant, that decision is almost certainly going to be withheld to very high levels of command. Think very senior generals or admirals, if not the Secretary of Defense or the President himself. But the law is well understood by the JAGs who are advising these commanders. And it is entirely a fact-based, case-by-case kind of situation. So by declaring, all bridges are potentially at risk or targets or all power plants, that suggests that kind of discrimination, target by target, is not going to happen. That's very problematic and very concerning.
And so then, General, last November, 6 Democratic members of Congress did a video, and these were veterans, folks who served in the military, reminding current service members that they do not and should not follow unlawful orders. And so given what we've been talking about all morning, given the latest social media post from the president saying that Tuesday will be power plant day and bridge day, and given what Daniel just said, would this constitute an unlawful order?
Well, you just heard a pretty good, sensible summary of what the law of warfare says about these kind of issues. But I think it'd be a diversion to go talk about the rule of law when we're watching, which by any rational standard is an unhinged President of the United States. Putting out messages with F-bombs in them, talking about putting them in hell, making possibly sarcastic comments about Islam. This is pretty nutty stuff. It's also obvious to the Iranians it's a sign of desperation. So he's weakening his ability to back up diplomacy with military power. I've never seen anything like this. I might add, it was interesting that they maintained operational security, which was good on recovering this second down Air Force officer. But I'm astonished at the lack of any visibility by most of the media into the details of what's been done, and then pushing off the explanation until Monday, when presumably there's an enhanced air campaign going after fundamental infrastructure. We are in trouble.